right, how's everybody doing? So now we're into week 3 here of the challenge. Let me give you a full screen. You saw it on that. We're right here on the 14th. Let me see if I can highlight that for you. Right here, that's where we're at. So today we're going to talk about how do you retain existing clients. And so what I want to do is walk you through just a quick model that you can use as we think about holding on to our existing clients. Again, how do we best do that? And so in order to do that, I want to show you something I think is really interesting. It was based on a paper that I came across, and I want to show you this because I think it's going to change how you think about retaining existing clients. So I was having a conversation with Tim Reister. He's with Corporate Visions. He wrote a great book called The Expansion Sale, highly recommended. In there, he recommended a paper that was called The Psychology of Doing Nothing. And I got the notes down here so you can see it at the bottom here. The psychology of doing nothing is basically why don't people want to do something? And in the paper, it basically came up with 4 reasons why people don't want to change. The first one is preference stability, which I think is an interesting concept, right? In other words, I don't want to change. Let's leave it the way it is. Not a big deal, right? We've all had clients like that. Number 2 is selection difficulty. Again, people are challenged to make a difference, selection between 2 items. So for example, if somebody wants to change, but they see that there's really not a big difference, they don't want to change. Number 3 is their perceived cost of change might be high. So you know what, this is going to cost a lot to change, so I just want to stay the way I am. And the 4th one could be, okay, if I decide to go forward, let me move my head here. If I decide to go forward, I might make a mistake, and therefore, you know what, I don't want to change. So let's think about this. The reason people don't want to change is because preference stability. I'm good, right? Selection difficulty. That's not really, big difference from what's going on out there. Perceived cost, too risky. Last one is, what if it goes wrong? So when we're trying to convince somebody to change, what we want to do is destabilize their preferences, kind of show the differences and why we're different, minimize the cost of change, right? And also kind of give them some, a security blanket, make them feel good about not changing and saying, in other words, de-risking, as Matt Dixon would say, how do you de-risk a situation? So they basically are not afraid to make a change. Now, here's what's interesting, because it's, we in sales, we have to do with 2 different worlds. It's like the, 2 different sides of the same coin. On one side, when we're trying to get in, we're trying to figure out how to overcome this. In other words, we're trying to destabilize preferences so people will buy from us, right? We're trying to really highlight why we're different so people will buy from us. We're trying to say, no, it's, you need to change, because if you don't change, it's going to cost you more in the long run. You need to change. And on the bottom one here, don't worry about it. We got you covered. We can make this happen. Again, this is what we're doing to try to make people change. But now let's flip it, because what we're talking about for this week's challenge is how do you hold on to them? Well, now you got to go to the other side of the coin, which means you got to reinforce everything right here. Now we have to reinforce. It's kind of schizophrenic if you think about it, right? When we're trying to sell people and change people, we're trying to convince them to change to our product. In other words, destabilize, create a sense of urgency. But when we're trying to hold on to them, we do the exact opposite. So what we have to do is now reinforce these. So let's go through some examples of what I mean by reinforcement. And I'll be very quick about this. So for preference stability, by the way, I just like the baby boss little graphic there. When we talk about this right here, so for example, let me come down here. So when we're talking about preference stability, what we're talking about is you got to remind the customer that, it took a while to get here. For you guys to switch over to our software, it took a while. So you don't want to go through that again. So you want to emphasize, look, there's a lot of agreements in place already. You don't want to mess with those. And on top of that, everybody's already using it. You really don't want to change. That's part of your storyline. Now when we look at selection difficulty, again, we're doing the opposite now. We want to basically say, look, it's similar to what you already have, so why would you want to go to somebody else? For example, if they bring up a competitor, they're offering the same things we offer. You got to shrink the difference gap. Let me kind of give that a little emphasis. In other words, if the customer is looking at somebody else, right, to move, you want to hold them, then you want to shrink the difference gap, basically saying they're not that much different than we are. They really don't offer that much more. So again, we're switching the narrative here a little bit. Next one is, any differences that exist, we can develop that over time. This is where you can offer, for example, a technology blueprint. Yeah, our competitor has this one feature, but if you need that, we can probably incorporate that within the next 3 months. Again, number 3. And again, We're trying to hold on. The perceived cost of change. Now, here's where you really want to scare them with, look, this is already sunk cost. That means you've already made the investment, sunk cost. Why would you want to change? And you want to emphasize the meta, as I call it. Money, effort, time, and acceptance and approval. What does that mean? Look, if you change to our competitor, it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you effort, time. And you know what? Are people really going to use it? Are they going to accept it? And what's the process for getting that approved? You don't want to change. And last but not least, keep in mind, Mr. Client, that there's always unanticipated, unknown, unintended consequences of any given change. Last, anticipate a regret. If you do decide to change, keep in mind there are a lot of risks associated with that, potential problems, and at the end of the day, you're going to get blamed for making that change. So if you look at these four in aggregate, I think what's interesting is that if you look at these four in aggregate, what you begin to see is that how we craft our message with our clients. Let me put this back up here so you guys can see it and erase all this. Let me get rid of that. So what I want to emphasize is that when we're doing a sales pitch and we're trying to get clients to stay, we're kind of, again, having to do the opposite. Preference stability to say, look, we want you to stay. Remind them of how much work has gone into getting the system in place, how we've been working well together. By the way, Tim Reister talks in his book, The Expansion Sale, how you want to document the results. So in other words, if your software or whatever product or service you're offering has helped them grow in their business, reduce costs, expand market share, whatever it may be, the more you can document that, the more that creates that preference stability. Let me repeat it again. Selection difficulty. Again, you want to close the difference gap so they'll stay, like why go somewhere else? Number 3, keep in mind, Mr. Customer, if you switch over, there are all these unexpected costs that could impact deliveries. There are going to be delays, supply chain issues, whatever it may be. And the last one, of course, is if you make the wrong mistake. In other words, why change something that's already working? Let's just make it better, Mr. Customer. And that is a retained mindset. So again, do me a favor, go to the website. Let me go back here. And again, just sign up for the challenge. It's really cool. Every week we'll be doing one of these. There's some worksheets that you're going to be able to download on this one. Here's a couple of videos I put on there for you. Let me go big screen on that. And again, these are just 2 videos I have on the website. Probably add a couple of more by the end of the day. And then there's also going to be some worksheets that you'll be able to download as part of this week's challenge. So the challenge this week is to think about ways that you can use this model. And again, I'm going to recommend the book, The Psychology of, article, The Psychology of Doing Nothing. And also I want to recommend Tim Reister's book, The Expansion Sale, which I think is a great book. So again, check that out. Go to the website, victorantonio.com. You'll see the ramp-up challenge for as we move towards the end of the new year and into a new year. Check out the challenge. Let me know what you think and love to hear your feedback. LinkedIn user says, good morning, right back at you. Salim, good morning to you. And I think on that note, I'm going to wrap this up. I know it was quick. I tried to be fast. Take care, guys.